Thank you, Mrs. Cartabia. It was great hearing you, and I congratulate on the first intervention you make in your new academy. They say in Latin America, mi casa es su casa. Our home is now your home. Now, I give the floor to Professor Lina Jassen. Are we having questions now?
No. Someone want to ask some question to call the opportunity that we have.
Oh, yes.
A very important minister.
Okay. Please.
Please say your position.
My name is Marty Meehan. I'm the president of the University of Massachusetts, but I also spent 14 years in the United States Congress too. So I have a political background and also a legal background. And we've talked a lot over the last couple of days about how the legal system in countries can impact outward lying. We talked, for example, about tobacco companies in the United States, and they're lying before the Congress and lying to the public about the danger of their product. We talked a little bit about other product liability cases where it's usually the courts that make products safe rather than the legislature because of the influence of money in American politics. We've talked about climate change and the economics behind the United States really taking bold action with climate change. And we've been discussing whether the legal system through lawsuits, amicus briefs, whatever, is an appropriate place to deal with this issue of lying. I don't know much about the legal system in Italy, but I've certainly read your bio, and you certainly do. And I was wondering whether you believe that some of the issues that we're talking about over the last couple of days could be dealt with in your country in the legal system. Is there a mechanism to deal with this?
Well, I think that we can do a lot by means of the legal norms. There are already a number of rules and sanctions for those who, like fraud. Fraud is punished in every legal system. You cannot say on products something that is not true, and you can be fined for that, or even worse. But the problem here, in my view, what is much more difficult is to intervene with legal norms in advance, because the judicial system, the legal system is always reactive. Here we need something that can prevent the damages that misinterpretation, misleading statements, or simply false fact can produce on social life, on the life of people. In a moment like, this one about the pandemic, you remember that at the beginning, some governments were simply denying the problems, the effects of the disease. It was all conspiracy made by, and in some cases, a number of governments has done nothing for their population in order to preserve their health. In other cases, some news are exaggerated, and so you have the opposite. It was a sort of justification to do too much. We had the problem in front of this pandemic, problem of government underreach and problem of government overreach in the reaction towards the problem caused by pandemic. I think that the problem in the public debate is to try to intercept the fake news, the misinformation before it goes viral. I mean, before it becomes a mindset in the population that can become difficult to fix. And here, legal instruments, in my view, are not enough. We can do something. We can impose rules on the social media, on the information, but to redress when they say something that is not correct. With the tobacco manufacturers in Europe, we have this duty to write on the packet of cigarettes that is dangerous for life. It's scary when you see that. It was a battle, a legal battle, in fact, even in Europe. We have to do something that alert people from the legal point of view in front of misinformation, but I think that working only on the legal side is not enough. I know the limits of legal instruments, and I think that it's not enough. 1 week ago, I was attending a different panel on disinformation, fake news, and so on and so forth. There were some journalists talking. One of the people invited was Ala Gorani from the CNN, were based in London. And she said something that in my view is very interesting. She says, you have to work on two sides, on the supply sides in order to prevent misinformation to get to people, but also on the demand sides, meaning education, developing critical understanding, especially for the young people, in order to be able to detect what is wrong and what is, something like fact-finding truth on one own.
Thank you.
Yes. If I may. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. My name is Ana Marta González. I'm professor of philosophy at the University of Navarra, and I'm a member of the academy. So we are colleagues right now, no? I imagine. Yes. I was appealed by the fact that you mentioned the fragility of facts. Why are facts so fragile? Why the reality of facts is so fragile, no? And of course, it made me think of Aristotle, but I'm not going to talk about Aristotle. But of course, facts depend on the way we present them in our judgments. For instance, I can take the table and bring it out of the window, but I cannot take the fact that the table is yellow and bring it out of the window. Facts, in a way, are presented in judgments. And of course, then that makes them dependent on the mind who makes that judgment. In other words, it depends on the credibility that you give to the person who is making a judgment. Of course, there are judgments which are true and judgments which are false, but to the extent that facts are presented in judgments, everything depends on the credibility that you pay to someone. And then we come back to ethics, we come back to character, we come back to, this is an issue that has come out in our discussions. And of course, being a politician, now you are in that position, this is difficult because media are always challenging the credibility of politicians. That's the problem. Yeah. So how do you react to this?
Just a short reaction because it's really interesting. What you said is really very relevant because one of the difficulties in the current public debate is that when you are not loyal to facts, immediately the debate moves away from, an argument on the topic that you are dealing with, be it the virus or the judicial reform or whatever you have to speak about. But immediately you say, okay, you are not credible because you have not, you don't know. One of the things that people that were criticizing some proposal that I made for the Italian legal system say, okay, she does not nothing because she has never been a lawyer in criminal courts. So you have the credibility because you cannot reply on the topic. And this is true. This is something that in the end becomes part of the poisoning of the public debate that comes from not being able to be loyal to facts and to the data as they are.
Well,
That's one, because justice is one of the.
last one, just because few.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your presence here. Yeah, yeah. So I'm Justin Farrell, a professor of sociology at Yale University. And
One of the organizers.
yeah.
Yes. We were.
So, we've also been talking about the role of education and the importance of education, which of course you know very well. What role can the government play in promoting education that will cultivate respect for science, but also cultivate and develop character in people and to promote the discernment of truth-seeking and process?
I would say critical thinking. Somebody says a proposal like, being able of teaching more science, teaching more other topics, other knowledge that we don't know. I think much more about the need of a methodology, not just giving information to students and asking them to know some information, but a methodology. When I went back between my two public commitment, at the end of the Constitutional Court, before going to the government, I had the chance to go back to my university teaching one class. And I decided to do an experiment to follow much more an American style, dialogical, Socratical, and so on, way of teaching, asking students much more than lecturing. It was difficult because in that moment we were teaching in front of the screen of my PC, and so it was not easy task, but it was really something that gave me enthusiasm, and I think that is something that can be over time, in the time, in long term, become the more relevant things to do, because you are training people think with your own mind. I don't care about the correct result. I care that you are able to use your mind, and that was really. I think that this is the priority in education, if there is one priority to say. Okay.
Thank you. Very instructive and fascinating for all of us. But now we have to move on. And